All right, what's going on, guys? We got Miguel from Break It Fix It on Instagram, and today we're going to be talking about why shops go as to putting in new engines versus rebuilding and stuff. All right, so you're working on an engine right now, or
No, I'm not working on an engine right now. You are, right? You got that Subaru,
yeah,
that long block.
yeah. So on
Oh
that
no, a
one,
short block, right? You got a short block because it
yeah,
didn't come with heads.
yeah. So it literally came with nothing. So it's a short block that I'm working on right now.
Mm.
It's an insurance claim. So with insurance, they go everything by they go by Mitchell One. And so on Mitchell One, it says it pays 18 hours for the short block. And I mean, I feel like this is like honestly like a 30-hour job, dude. Like it's just too much work. The short block comes with it's just the block and doesn't come with a new oil pump, doesn't come with a new oil cooler. Um, it really doesn't come with any, it's just the block. And it's full. And then they give you a big old head gasket. I'll give you a box that's filled with a bunch of gaskets not labeled and everything. So you have to be like a Subaru tech to know like, oh, this O-ring goes here, this O, you know what I mean? So that one's been kind of kicking my ass. And then I'm not continuously on it. And I took out the motor over a month ago and then took everything apart. And of course I laid everything out in order as I took it apart and I put bolts where I took them off, but still at the same time I'm just like, uh, how did I take this bolt off or how did this bolt go on? Like the big one like was taking off the intake manifold. Like, I was trying to take off the upper intake manifold, but you actually there's only like four bolts. You pull it and you got to pull it with the whole harness and everything. And I didn't know that, so I was like, I took a lot of shit off, just trying to take off the upper manifold once I got the engine out and everything. So that one, it's just been like kicking our ass. And do you hear that?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Shit.
Unless you could hear my AC that is turned on. Is that what you're talking about?
No, there was like fireworks or something going on, and I didn't like it.
You guys get all the fun stuff in Texas.
Yeah. So right now it's just been a pain in the ass. Like I worked a little bit Thursday. I finally got the whole engine assembled and put in, but I mean, had to change the so on the old block, pull it out. I gotta take off the oil pan. I gotta take off the pickup tube, the baffle. I had to pull off the oil pump because the customer wasn't gonna buy a new oil pump, so I had to pull off the oil pump. You know, I basically stripped it down to where it was just a block on the old one. And during that, I realized the oil pump was full of metal. The oil cooler had metal inside of it. So I was like, I told my boss, I was like, we can't use this shit. Like, we need to get something else. Someone has to pay for it. Whether we had to eat it, because like we're already touching it, you know what I mean? We're already getting screwed on the labor. And, you know, if this doesn't get fixed and then it messes up, that's on us. You know what I mean? And to an extent, but so customer finally decided to buy that oil pump, oil cooler, and a thermostat because we didn't get a new thermostat from Subaru. So took it apart, sent the heads in. Heads took 2 weeks to get in, and then they did the valve stem, the valve stem seals and all of that.
Well,
And
did they? I'm surprised they even approved your head work because you know I'm not sure what insurance company they were using, but a lot of times they'll say, "Well, was the head gasket worn, or was the head worn? No, then reuse it, clean it off, and reuse it."
yeah, see that's another thing too. We never anytime even if we're doing head gaskets, I mean, and the heads were good, you know, working fine. We still send them to the shop just because once we a big car like that, like we were talking about earlier, once you touch them, you're married to it. You know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
and it sucks for this one because this customer did not want to pay a penny. I mean, his clutch was burnt like a motherfucker, so I had already had it out. And, you know, I was like, replace your clutch, man. Like it's gone. You're gonna have to replace it here within the next few months, especially if you're driving the way you're driving. I'm pretty sure it's a kid too, so I'm pretty sure the reason it started knocking is because he was racing it and shit and starved it of oil or whatever. So he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do a new timing belt, new tensioner, none of that. You know what I mean? No new water pump. They want to do a new water pump, new radiator. We didn't put a new intake. You know what I mean? All the things you're supposed to do when you put a new engine. We didn't do none of that. So right now I'm kind of scared. Like, I built it. I checked the timing. I rolled it. Nothing. It seems it's good. Timing's lined up. Looks good. So I've already stabbed it in. And this is my first engine pull on a Subaru or anything major. I've never actually worked on the dual overhead cam Subarus. I've always worked on the single overhead cams. I've touched a bunch of timing belts and a bunch of little maintenance and stuff like that, but I've never spark plugs, valve covers. Excuse me, but I've never done like this depth of a job. So I'm like scared. Like once I put it in, like I hope it fucking starts and it's good. You know what I mean? Because if not, that was a lot of work to. And actually, pulling the engine, I mean, that's probably the easiest engine pull next to Mercedes and Infiniti. But me not knowing, I pulled off a lot of shit I didn't have to pull off initially. You know what I mean? And then I always look at the book too to see like it says pull this, pull this, pull this, and I kind of like let me do this, let me do this. But there's a lot of stuff I pulled off that I was like, man, I didn't even have to pull this off. I could, pull the whole crate out, saved a lot of time there. So
Yeah. See, I don't read the book. That's where you messed up. See, if I knew how to read, I wouldn't be a mechanic.
I mean, I always just read just to see what they say. I mean, especially if I've never worked on them, like that Duramax I did a whole fuel system on, whatever. We actually got really good on that one. It paid 40 hours. The insurance company approved 40 hours, and but it was actually the customer had to pay for the labor, and the insurance company paid for all the parts. The labor was only $4,000, and that's because we gave the customer a discount because he's actually a loyal customer and brings a lot of work in to us. So we actually give him a discount because we charge 130, I believe, for diesels per hour, and we just gave him a 100 flat rate, $100. So basically $30 off the labor, and the insurance company covered all of his parts, which was like $9,000 in parts. You know what I mean? So it was like a $14,000 ticket. And on that one, I mean, the labor's it paid off. The labor said, 40 hours, but it was said to pull the cab, take off the turbo, and this and that. And I was like, man, I'm not. I looked. I was like, okay, I was almost about to pull off the cab and everything, pull off the turbo, and I really started looking at it, and I was like, man, I think I can snake this shit out.
At least tilt or not lift it all the way out, but just loosen up the bed bolt. I mean, not the bed bolts, the body bolts, and then just lift it up slightly, not all the way off.
Well, I didn't have to do all of that. All I did, I told my boss, I was like, hey, get these gaskets. What I did was I pulled the whole, basically where the front water pipe inlet is. I don't know if you worked on the 6.6 Duramax, is the 2012 to 2016, 2017, the LML.
You know what's ironic? Okay, I worked for GM, but I wasn't really working on diesels back then.
No.
And I have a lot more experience on Fords. Not to say that I'm by any means a Ford expert, but I have a lot more experience on Ford diesels than I do on GM now. But to answer your question, no, I'm not familiar with it. I mean, I'm sure if you showed me, because the Duramaxes have been the same pretty much for like the entirety of his life.
Yeah, they're almost all pretty much identical. They got a little differences here and there, intake wise and where the turn.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Well, on this one, so I don't know if you've ever done a water pump on one.
Mm-mm.
Well, on the water, they're stupid easy and they pay good. They pay like 13 hours, and you could probably knock it out in like 4 hours. And they're pretty easy once you know how to do them. So basically, what I did, I didn't pull out the water pump, but all the stuff you got to pull out to get to the water pump, kind of, is what I did. There's a crossover pipe in the front. I pulled that off. There's a bracket that holds the fan clutch. I pulled that off and pulled it forward, and I took off all the alternator brackets and everything. I took off a lot of front end stuff, as opposed to pulling the transmission or pulling the cab or anything like that. I pulled off a lot of front end stuff, and I was actually able to snake out the. I had to pull off the EGR. That one was kind of hard, just because of the way. I mean, it was just they're a pain in the ass sometimes. And pulling that one off, whatever. So the book there, that's like a scenario, basically. Like the book saying you do all this bullshit when, you know, I did it the way I did it and saved a lot of time.
Yeah.
Took a little bit longer, I guess. A lot more parts had to come off than what needed to be, but it made the job easier. So, but back to the engines, like with my boss, we were talking about it on Thursday because I mean, and he's not mad at all. He knows like we got screwed on the labor, but I was like, man, we should probably just put a used engine in this one. You know, with the way that the customer is, like, and as much time we spent, it would have just been way faster. The car would have been gone a long time ago if we found a used engine somewhere, swapped it out, boom, sent them on their way. You know what I mean? Give them a
Yeah.
warranty of whatever the place we give us. Some place give us a 90-day warranty, some give us a 1 year unlimited miles, some only give us 12,000. You know, give them that warranty and then been on his way, because we're definitely eating a lot of money. Um, Especially in labor, we're eating a lot of money, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna come back for something, man. Like I already know, like that timings. I hate reusing timing parts, especially when timing belts. You know what I mean? I could already tell it has its age in it, and we can't be fronting the customer that money. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Well, I mean, both you and I are just techs. We don't run the business. Obviously, we don't control how much we charge. We don't control any of that. Although I'm not sure how it works in your shop, but I do have a pretty good influence on like what we charge for labor. Um, I will say this: I have a really good writer, man. Like the service writer I got now that I work with now, he's good, and he makes sure we get paid. And he's not afraid to ask for more money, and he's not afraid. He knows how to do it correctly and how to justify it. Like
yeah,
he's not going to be like, oh well, you're slow at this, so we're going to charge more time. He's not going to do that, but he is he does know how to justify it. And like, for instance, we're talking about Mitchell One. Mitchell One is so generic in what they consider a long block or a short block. So and every manufacturer does their blocks differently. So for instance, we are talking about earlier a ProMaster. I did a ProMaster. It did not come with an oil pan, and it did not come with a timing cover, and it did not come with pretty much anything besides just the heads on top. And that oil pan and timing cover take time to transfer over, because it's a lot of silicone you need to clean off. It's just a pain, and that takes time. I mean, to properly clean a timing cover, you're gonna spend 30 minutes to an hour there cleaning it off.
yeah. Getting all the
Yeah,
freaking
run into the parts washer if you have one. Yeah, and then you'll scrape in all the silicone off, and then torque, and then after that you gotta torque everything down. And that's a lot of time.
yeah.
And they don't pay for cleaning, on the labor ops under Mitchell.
Yeah,
So
they
you
don't put
gotta
none of that.
justify it somehow, you know. And it's not that we're trying to rip people off. It's just that we can't work for free,
Yeah,
And then not only that, there's a lot of accessories that sometimes are expected to come that aren't, you know.
yeah.
Um, you got to transfer over sensors, stuff
There's
like that.
studs.
So yeah, all that adds up to the time frame. Um, so yeah, it's unfortunate that sometimes we can't charge for all that time. But like with anything, let's say you do that job right, and you spend 30 hours on an 18-hour job. Repetition is how you get good at it. You keep
Yeah,
doing it, and then like, oh, next time we look at this we look at this job and we see what parts we ordered. Okay, so we quoted at this much. This is how long it took us. We originally brought these parts in, but then after we got into it, we found out we had to get these parts. So you quote those parts initially, and what it really comes down to is, who runs the shop? Is it the insurance company or is it you? You know, and or the owner, of course. And unfortunately enough, like my boss, he's pretty good about that. And he's like, hey, I run the shop. No fleet management or insurance company runs my shop. So if they don't like the way that we do work here, like for instance, there's no way he would ever let an engine job go with an old timing belt.
hmm
There's no way he would let it go with without a new thermostat, anything like that. He wouldn't do it. Just because even if they come back and we tell them, well, your thermostat was bad and that's why your engine went bad again. but your insurance company didn't want to pay for thermostat, then we get scot free. We don't have to pay anything. We don't have to give him any kind of warranty, and he's up the creek. It still makes us look bad.
Well, it's not even that. If it's because we told the customer like, hey, your insurance company, like, this needs to be replaced, and they're like, no.
Yeah.
Like, we really had a hard time. Like, we tried to tell them, like, replace your clutch, replace your timing belt, replace the like bare minimum. Like, you don't want to replace the radiator, fine, we'll flush it out, we'll clean it, whatever. Okay, replace your thermostat, replace your water pump, oil cooler. But we could barely. I mean, like, we're not spending a penny. We're not spending a penny. Blah blah. So that's all we can do. So, and we cover ourselves. Like, well, since you didn't want to replace it, if it fails because of this particular reason, then that's on y'all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the thing is, let's say he does come back. Let's say that he comes back next week and no compression, red timing belt. You're like, well, too bad. I told you, you need a new timing belt. You both lose in that situation, So in that situation, it's kind of just best to tell him, hey, kickstand, take it next door to another shop, like from the beginning, right? Like,
yeah,
hindsight's 2020. I get that.
I think on this one, just because my boss saw the labor 18 hours, and it's definitely slow, and he's like, oh, maybe it'll be easy, and he's like, book says, and my boss always says, book says only pays this much, and we've gone into it. I'm like, stop going by the book. Look at other places. Really look at the damn thing and see how much it pays. Like, we need to start, because the way me and my boss are a team. I'm like his apprentice. He does about 75% of the diag. I do about 75% of the repairs, and then I do, like, the 25. I do diag when he's not there.
Yeah.
So I got backed up with big jobs. Like, I have like 3 heavy line jobs at one point. And there was an AC job that needs to be done. And I was like, well, you're gonna have to do it, because I'm busy, he knows. So he did it, and it only paid an hour and a half, and he was pissed because it took him like 5 hours because of how much.
That's the name of the game, though. You know? Unfortunately.
And then he went, but that's what Mitchell wanted. And then he went and looked on Identifix, and it said 3.2 hours.
Yeah.
So he robbed himself at least an hour and a half, but. So, I've already gone on, like we need to start focusing. But that one we did, we got screwed. He's really eating it.
But okay, let me give you this one too, though, right? So I don't want to go too far away from, like, the original subject of, like, the engine rebuild versus in-house rebuilding, buying remands versus in-house rebuilding. But let's say, okay. For instance, I know that a lot of these GM, like, Terrains and not Equinoxes. Equinox, I believe, came with 3.6s also. But a lot of those crossover 3.6s, they had an issue with the power steering pump, and they paid a ridiculous amount of time to do them. They paid like 6 to 8 hours to do them. Just a 2-hour job, Yeah. Not even touching it. And that was warranty time, so I don't even know what Mitchell is. Mitchell's probably like 11 and 12. I can't, in that sense, I can't charge a customer 12 hours for that job. Like, obviously there's an error there in the time. I'd probably still charge him, enough to make money on it. I'd probably charge him 6 hours, because I know the shop next door is going to charge him 12. But you got to take your wins with your losses. Sometimes it's just how it is.
Yeah, it really is. But I've noticed a lot, because actually recently we've actually gotten in like 4 vehicles within like the last couple months that need engines, and 2 of the customers want to rebuild them, and my boss is like, no, I don't want to rebuild them because it's too much time. It's cheaper for the customer, but maybe by $1,000, $1,500, which is still a lot of money. They where they save money in is in parts versus labor. So as for us, my boss always tries to sell a new motor or a used motor. I've kind of told him, like, to stop with the used motors, because we've been getting screwed lately with our used motors, but sometimes that's the only option we have. But just because it's a faster turnaround and it's less headaches.
One more free rack.
yeah, like the Subaru. I mean, that's taken up a rack, over a month now. So we're losing. We're now down one rack, and then it's just taking. It's a waste. It's a waste of money for the shop per se. A customer. It's cheaper on a customer to rebuild, obviously, but sometimes there's a lot more headaches. Like rebuilding the 5.4s and 4.6, my boss doesn't like to rebuild them because
Yeah.
sometimes they don't run right afterwards. They don't. They're not the same. Why? I don't know. I mean, you can have everything right, but they don't last as long. They last like maybe another 60,000 miles or something, and they have problems because that's happened to us. So it's
Well, here's the thing though, right? What engine out there right now? I can only think of really one engine out there right now that I would consider rebuilding.
what's that? I would
You
think
probably already know what it is.
any I think any GM engine is worth rebuilding, just
Any
because
what?
any GM like the V8 motors, any GM.
Yeah, V8s. I wouldn't rebuild a 3.6.
No, yeah, yeah. No, but any V8 GM motor, I think, is worth rebuilding. I mean, they're stupid easy to take apart
Mm-hmm.
and super common anywhere. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think that's the good thing about GM. But I mean, um, Ford, no, it's better. It's better to replace the engine than rebuild it. Some customers really, really push to rebuilding, and that's why we have. But I mean, because Ford does a long block, so they send you the heads and everything. And what I
Mm-hmm.
like about Ford is they're really good. They send you a brand new water pump. They send you a brand new thermostat. They give you a new oil filter, oil pans on, rear main seals on. Like it's all you're basically doing is transferring engine mounts, accessories, putting a new intake. And then even on the block where the intake sits, they have a sticker that says put uh, must replace intake or warranty
Yeah.
void and stuff like that. Must replace. Oh, they even send you a freaking new PCV. Because they said that needs to be
Mm-hmm.
replaced. Or so that's what I really like about Ford. GM, I did a 6.0 on an Escalade maybe about a year ago, and that one didn't come with jack shit. Um,
Really?
yeah, it was literally just the long block. There was no oil pan, um, nothing. We had to get the water pump and all of that stuff. The customer didn't care, but it was just like I saw how manufacturers Kia, all they do is short blocks. So and Kias are actually Kia Hyundai. I've done like 3 short blocks. So they're pretty easy on the little 4 bangers. They have a problem with the rod bearings losing oil and going out.
Yeah, I've heard. I haven't. I don't. I guess I should say this now. Like, I don't really work on too many regular vehicles anymore.
Just
Um,
the medium duty.
yeah, medium duty. I mean, I still work like on a lot of pickups, and I do work on regular cars, but not to the extent that you do. And I mean, I come from a background where I did, but just where I'm at now, like we work on a lot of 1500 and up trucks. Um, so we do like like Silverados, F-150s, F-250s, F-350s, lots of diesels. But I would say probably half of what we do is medium duty. So larger like Isuzus, Cummins, um, stuff like that. International, although international's been getting phased out, we still got some internationals, um, stuff like that. So I don't do too many, like, for instance, Honda engines, Toyota engines, except on the side, which obviously I still do a lot of those, but not nearly to the extent that you do. But we do we do still do a lot of engine replacements, because a lot of pickups have, your V8s, your 5.3s, your 6.0s, your 4s with their 5.4s and 4.6s, their 5.0s also, and then Dodge with their crap.
They're
Their 5.7s.
stupid ass.
But yeah, I mean, we don't out of all the makes that I see now, there's only one manufacturer that I would even consider rebuilding, and that would be the GM, because there's still an old school pushrod engine, and A lot of them, like the 6.0s, a lot of 6.0s we see don't have the cylinder deactivation, so it's just like a regular bare bones engine.
Oh, they don't
Really
play
easy.
FM.
Yeah, so a lot of times you could just hone them out, put new rings in there, and just get everything resurfaced and let it go. But even then, we don't do them, and the reason for that is just that okay, so we get this engine, we tear it apart, we take up a rack. By the time we get everything back from the machine shop, because
What's that? I
we
can hear you.
we don't, I said we don't do like any machining of heads there.
Yeah.
And you know, it, so we gotta send that out. Um, so by the time we get it all done, you're into 2-3 weeks turnaround time, and you're also relying on the machine shop to make sure they did their work right.
Yep.
And then you save maybe $1,000, maybe,
Yeah.
and what you
Yeah.
could buy. Yeah, because I bought a 6.0 for my truck and I paid $2,400, and that thing comes with a 3-year warranty.
Damn, it's not bad. Like,
It's not bad. It comes with a 3-year warranty, and if something goes bad, they pay me to take it off.
yeah.
Send me another one.
I don't know. I had seen that the other day. Actually, I don't know if you follow Nuts and Bolts with Tony Harlan. Pretty cool dude. Well, he did some heads on a rodeo. I think like 4 months ago, whatever. They shipped it, whatever, and it came back because the valves were bad. It was smoking. And that's not his fault. That's the machine shop part.
The valve stem seals.
Yeah, there was something wrong with the heads. I believe it was burning. It was smoking out black, so there was something wrong with the valves. So again, there they go. He had to go and tear it apart, and he ended up leaving that shop. So I don't know what happened, but then again, I mean, is the machine shop going to pay you warranty for that? You know what I mean? They're not. So
yeah,
for shop wise, it's faster and more efficient and more money into the shop's pocket to just R&R, and that's almost just about anything these days. And just change the engine and ship it. With transmissions, we do rebuild transmissions a lot just because our guy can turn them
but
out.
do you build transmissions or do you send them out? Do you sublet it?
We send them out. If we rebuild some in-house, I think it would take a lot. For me, as I'm the only tech with me and my boss, so I mean, I can't be rebuilding a transmission, and you know what I mean, and trying to work on other cars as well. You know what I mean? So we gotta send them out, and the guy we send him to, he's really good. Gives us a 3-year, 36,000 mile warranty.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a long time.
Usually a 1 week turnaround. He'll get it done.
That's a good warranty.
Yeah, it's good, and he builds really good, really good transmissions, and his price is great, so it's good for the shop. So transmission is the only thing that we really do. We'll always tell the customer we'll rebuild it or we'll put a new one. Transmission, we try not to put used ones just because almost every used transmission we get is just they're burnt up, they're bad, like you know what I mean. So
yeah, transmissions are so. I mean, I worked at a transmission shop where we did builds, obviously. Well, actually, I shouldn't say obviously because a lot of transmission shops don't do builds anymore. They just focus on doing transmission replacement. Like, I'm not sure if you guys have AAMCO over there.
There's some AAMCO shops, yeah.
Yeah, AAA, MCO. Beep, beep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like they don't even the ones in our area, I think only one of them actually, I think there's like 4 of them in our area, and I think only one of them actually does rebuilds. The rest just do the same thing any other shop would do. Yeah, so where I worked at, we did rebuilds. But we had a guy that's all he did was rebuilds, and we had a clientele for it, so that's why we did it there. I didn't rebuild. Actually, I went there wanting to learn how to rebuild. The first guy that worked there as a builder, he was trash. I'm glad I did not pick anything up for him. And the other guy, he was good. I would trust him with my transmission. It's just that he wasn't the teaching type, and he was just, he didn't have the patience to teach anybody. And honestly, I think I just didn't have the patience to tolerate him. He was just, man, he was one annoying guy. He was just super annoying. I always try to ignore him as much as I could. but he yeah, that's what we built transmissions there, and from what I saw, we did pretty good at it. We made good money from it, you know. But now we use the transmission builder. I like this guy that we use. We have had a couple comebacks through him, but you know he's always taking care of it, and he does it at a price where it's still reasonable for us to make a profit off of. And to be honest, I don't trust remanufactured engines from aftermarket suppliers, or even worse. I would say the worst manufacturer of rebuilt transmissions is dealer transmissions.
Really?
Yes, from my experience. You know, somebody else, I'm sure somebody will say the opposite. They'll be like, "Oh, I only use GM Goodwrench transmissions and engines, and they're the best, made by the best people." I think that's BS. Because you take, for instance, the 4L60, all right? This 4L60 has been out since like 92, 93. It's been a transmission that's been used in, you know, everything from Camaros to Trailblazers to big, you know, trucks, you know? It's a very common transmission with a lot of common issues. But if you were to, today, almost 20 years later, if you were to order that transmission, it would be the same. And let's say you had a 93 Camaro. Well, actually, I think 94, because 93 I think was still
The 700
or
60.
It was a weird year. All right, let's say 94 just to be safe. Somebody out there will correct me if I say 93. Let's say 94, and I would pull that transmission out and send it out and swap it out with one from a GM Goodwrench engine or transmission. It'll be the same as the one I sent out, and there are so many updates to that transmission that have improved the functionality, the drivability, and more importantly, the reliability of it that they have not performed.
They just send it back out with no upgrades.
Exactly. And yeah, and there's so many things. I can't think of a better example of a transmission that's gone through so many changes to make it so much better and reliability. And I know, for instance, that like what's that big company that built in Jasper? Okay, Jasper.
I don't trust my other engines for shit.
Yeah. No. Okay. And see, the thing is, I think they got the right idea in how they update them, because they go through the updates, and they do perform a lot of the updates and a lot of the upgrades to make it more reliable. I think this is the people building them really hate their job.
Maybe. Like, speaking on that one, I was talking to a Nissan tech, and he had posted something, and I was like, y'all don't rebuild the whole transmission, the CVT transmission. And he was telling me the dealers, I mean, they don't replace every part. They just, it makes sense. Like, they just fix the part that's broken, put it together, and it's considered, reman. But I mean, if you're gonna take it apart, replace it, and put a new one in. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the thing though too, is they gotta make money, and it's like, okay, let's say where I think a lot of techs don't understand is that how a lot of techs, who are good techs, just don't know internals of a transmission, because the only way you'll get that experience is working at a transmission shop and being a builder. So they expect whenever that transmission is taken apart, that everything is replaced, it's rebuilt, like how an engine is whenever it's gone through. But put it this way, right? Let's say you have a transmission. Let's say you have a 4L60, all right? It's a 4L60 because pretty much every listener here is familiar with a 4L60. Let's say you have a 4L60, you have the very common problem of it having burnt 3/4 clutches. If you send that transmission out to, if you do an exchange for GM, they're probably just going to replace those 3/4 clutches and then send it back to you. And they're not going to perform the upgrades that fix that. And it's the equivalent of getting an engine that had bad piston rings and then just replacing the piston rings.
Instead of like just, replacing the whole pistons and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with, re-ringing an engine.
No, yeah.
But it's not a new engine. If you're still, you may put new bearings on it, but did you grind the crank down? I mean, did you bore out the cylinders? Did you, you know what I mean? Like, no, they probably just honed them and then, put new piston rings in there. The equivalent of that. I know we're talking two different scenarios, engine versus transmission, but it's the equivalent of that. And the builder I have now, and I can speak on it too, because he just did my transmission. Like, he did all the updates. Like he replaced the valve train for my accumulator valve,
Hmm.
um, specifically because I told him to, but because he installed a shift kit in it too, to a correction kit that improves the exhaust part of the accumulator valve train. Um, Not only that, he did the Sonax kit for the torque converter valve train, um, and he did the Z pad clutches, and he did the wideband 1 2, and then I did the 5 gear, the 5 pinion planetary gear, front and rear, all this stuff that improves significantly the reliability of that transmission. You know,
Yeah.
and I can tell you that transmission drives completely different now.
Does it? I
Yeah.
don't know if you follow Jay Choppis on Instagram.
Mm-mm.
Follow him, and I'll send you his page on Instagram. But check him. He does transmission rebuilds, and
Mm-hmm.
I see he posts them a lot. But what I like that he does, they actually upgrade the transmissions. He puts say this part's bad, instead of just putting a new one from the DM. They have, okay, how do you upgrade to make it better so it doesn't do this anymore? And I noticed
Exactly.
that's what they do as for rebuilding transmissions, put it together, of course, and ship it. And they do in-house transmission rebuilds, which is honestly, I would really, really love to start doing transmission rebuilds.
Oh, I would too, man. Like you said, I'm look. I'm by no means an expert on transmissions, and I'm sure I've probably said some bad stuff that somebody's going to be like, "Oh, he doesn't know transmissions," and blah blah. But I'm knowledgeable enough to know what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
And yeah, man, I always want to learn how to build transmissions. It's a skill that I always want to learn. Um, but it's one of those things that you need to have a good instructor, because a lot of it's not something you can pick up from a book. Um, and there are so many different transmissions out there that even my builder, when I send my transmission from like some oddball, not oddball, but let's say like something relatively new, he'll be like, "Well, I can't quote you on it because I've never taken one of these apart before." You
yeah,
know, and that doesn't mean he can't do it. It just means that he hasn't done it yet. Just like it doesn't mean just because you haven't worked on a Subaru engine doesn't mean you can't do one. It means that you haven't done one yet, so you don't know what to expect.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, that's why I prefer local builders, just because. Oh, and here's one thing too. I should say about rebuilding transmissions is that when you it's a whole assembly line. So when you send the transmission in, some guy is there taking it apart, and all the parts. If you got a drum here, put in that bucket. If you got if you got a pump here, put in that bucket. And they go through the same bucket with a whole bunch of other pumps. And when they reassemble it, your part might end up in a different transmission, and you might get somebody else's part.
just because they're the same.
Yeah, exactly. So you get a mixed match of worn parts, and they're
Yeah,
not going to be like, oh, well, this one's borderline bad. They're going to be like, this one's still good.
yeah.
It's just barely good enough.
I mean, it's the
You
same
know?
with push rods. I mean, I don't sometimes there's some things I don't agree with my boss on. Like, I think I did the first heads I did on a GM motor. I went and labeled all the push rods. I put, okay, this one's for this cylinder. This one, this way's up. I put them. He's like,
Yeah.
just take them out, throw them in a bucket, and put them back in. I was
No,
like,
heck
no,
no.
they have different wear patterns. This one was gonna wear different from, cylinder one's gonna wear different from cylinder 8. I can't put 8 on one. He's like, nah, he's like, I never have any problems. So that's stuff I don't like, with my boss or whatever. But
Yeah.
that's a lot that happens in the backgrounds of rebuilding stuff. But in the long run, it's always, rebuild. I think if you're a mechanic, so like my transmission, it has a leak, should I rebuild it or should I just get a new one? You know what I mean? It's gonna cost me a lot more money to replace it, and it'll be faster, but it's a lot cheaper for me to take it apart, fix it, and put it back in. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Oh,
And here's one thing I will say, man. Like I'm a huge nerd, all right? Like I'm a huge car nerd. And like if I have, for instance, an AC compressor and it has a bad bearing, if it's my own car, all right, I will, I'll look up, bearing for that AC compressor, and then usually there won't be one available. So what I'll do is I'll take that bearing out, and I'll match the numbers, and I'll go to Napa and I'll match one up because I don't feel like replacing a compressor for a bad bearing. I love rebuilding.
Yeah.
Sorry, my hair should mesh. One of the things about working at a dealer is that they're always trying to cheap out, so they do a lot more rebuilds than they do replacement of components. Even stuff that's not regular rebuilt, like let's say for instance that it's common for a certain part to go wrong, they'll release a component, just that component, so that way you don't have to replace the whole assembly. You know,
Yeah.
like for instance, when their steering racks are going bad on some of their crossover SUVs, they
Hmm.
didn't have to replace the whole steering rack. They had to replace just the steering gear part of that rack. Um, Something that you normally can't do, you know.
Yeah.
But I like doing that kind of stuff. I like doing those component level repairs. But when it comes to like customers' vehicle reliability, um, when it comes to like reliability, comeback prevention, as far as like what are the risks of it coming back because everything else is worn out, or like it being like a very intensive job where I can't afford to do that job again for free.
Exactly.
It's going to get a new or remanufactured component, and unfortunately, that's how it has to be sometimes. Um,
And I think
it doesn't make sense.
I think that's just the way the industry is going in general. I mean, most things are getting away from rebuilding. It's all R&R. So, with engines buying a remand, a new one, or it's better to honestly go new because, like, we were talking about the remand, and you don't know what they might reuse parts and just, oh, this is the part that failed on this engine. We'll clean it up, make it look nice, replace this one part, we save some money, send it out. It's a remand. Versus when you get a new one
Well,
or supposedly everything's supposed to be new. It's straight from the manufacturer. It's new, hasn't been touched. You know what I mean?
yeah, but some things you can't get new. You have to get reman. Like most engines, you can't get a new engine for unless it's like, for instance, like the LS3 or some of these highly sought after engines that they still manufacture new. You could buy new, but like take like your typical, Toyota four-cylinder engine. Chances are you can't buy a new one. Although once you buy it through the dealer, yeah, you can't. You have to get a remanufactured one.
The remand or short.
Um, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. I guess you could buy a lot of new short blocks. But then again, is that just considered reman because you're putting the old heads on it?
Maybe I don't
Um,
know. Well,
yeah, that's a
unless
whole different area.
if you send out the heads and stuff, I would think it'd be considered remanufactured. Unless,
Yeah. So I guess what point is it new and what point is it reman, right?
yeah, that would be a good definition. What defines remand and what
Yeah.
defines new.
Yeah. On a side note, like if you ever buy a starter or alternator from a dealer, also they're always reman. They're not new.
Yeah,
You
I've
can't buy.
actually. Well, I mean, if you've worked on Fords, the alternators are pretty bad, and the starters go out a lot on the
Mm-hmm.
Fords.
That's GM too.
Well, not too long ago, I did an alternator, and we got a alternator. It said remand, and I was like, okay, it's from Ford, whatever. Put it on. Man, it was making noise like crazy, and it wasn't charging. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
we got a bad remand, so we had to send it back in. So
Yeah.
there's same time. So I mean, that could have been a thing where they got an alternator that wasn't charging, or it was a bad bearing or whatever, and they just replaced, or maybe it was just a bad pulley, and they just replaced the pulley, cleaned it up, and sends it out saying it's remand. You know what I mean?
Or the guy who tested it just didn't test it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of hard to, I guess, really say it, but for shop
Yeah.
purposes and money wise, it's always going to be better to put in a new one.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. So that remanufactured alternator, who paid for that new alternator? Ford did. You didn't pay for it. You didn't say, well, I remanufactured this alternator incorrectly. Now I got to take it all apart and buy new parts again, blah, blah. You said, hey, you sent me a bad alternator, take it back and give me another one, you know?
Yeah.
So there you go. You didn't lose money on, well, you lost some time, but you didn't
We
lose.
lost time because I had to take it back off, and then of course they didn't. I mean, I don't know if they ended up paying for the warranty time or whatnot.
Yeah. And even then, they rarely ever pay you all
It,
of it.
it's really hard to get warranty time too. So that's
Mhm.
another thing you got to look at too. Is it better to rebuild this engine? Am I going to get that warranty time if it comes back because something fails from the manufacturer, or do I just put a used one? Hey, this is the warranty you're going to get. I don't have to tear it down. If it messes up, this company is going to pay me my labor, and we'll
Hmm.
get the customer taken care of. So
Yeah, even if they only pay you a fraction of your labor, could
that's
pay for
still
that overtime for that tech to stay and finish the job again.
yeah,
It's better than nothing, is what I'm saying.
it's definitely better than nothing. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think for customers like now, I think especially after this one, I think my boss is honestly going to try to go for um, making sure customers pay for what the work is, the labor is, or just go, no, we can't do it for that low. Yeah, we'll put it used in for that much, or we'll put this in, for that much or whatever. But it's just faster and easier to, it's better for books shop wise. Customers might save a little bit of money,
Yeah.
but in the long run, that's all it really comes down to, and that's kind of where the industry is going too. So it kind of sucks, and that's a different topic. But
Yeah. And here's another thing too is that, let's be honest, let's say you know how to rebuild engines, right? You're a
yeah,
competent guy, you can rebuild engines. Let's say you've done 300, small block Chevys throughout your career, and not one of them has come back, or they've all been good, successful rebuilds. You know, comes a day where, for whatever reason, you forget something. Now it's on you to pay for it,
yeah, yeah,
Whereas you could put that blame on somebody else if they mess up that rebuild. And actually, it's funny because I had a Dodge ProMaster that I was doing I was transferring over the timing cover and oil pan on, and I was gonna put the oil pan on there first, and I was like, I had on the engine stand, and I was like, should I turn it over? I was like, nah, I don't need to turn it over. I'll just stick the oil pan from underneath. Had on, and I was like, I talked myself out of it, and I was like, nah, I'm gonna turn the engine over so that way I can work on it comfortably and put the oil pan down.
nice and flashy, easy.
Yeah, just like, yeah, it's be easier. When I turned that engine over, all I heard was bloop, 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 bloop,
Like
and a nut
something.
fell out.
Oh,
A nut fell out of the valve train.
so something somewhere someone messed up and then torque some.
Somebody messed up,
Dang.
and I caught it. I lucked out because, but had that been, and the thing is, it was a standard nut, a
Yeah,
standard thread, so it didn't come from that engine.
it came from. So it's just something that was in there.
Something that maybe their tool,
Oh,
some assembly equipment, something, somebody when they're building that engine, drop something in there,
and then it. Oh,
If I
yeah.
had that been me, I would have been paying for it, and I'm glad I'm glad I caught it because obviously I don't go through the trouble of doing it, but
They could have said it was you that dropped something in there.
exactly,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's and I know it wasn't me because it was an odd nut. It's not like anything that I've seen, or that I had it laying around,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it you shift so much of the responsibility onto somebody else, and it keeps you more secure. And also, it's a lot less stress. You're talking to me earlier about how you're worried about how the Subaru is going to start up,
Yeah.
and I've been there, dude. And I've been there where I've built something, and I'm like, man, I really hope I didn't forget something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just want to start this damn thing because I don't want to not finish it today, and then stay up all night today, dreading tomorrow,
because
thinking that it may not start correctly.
yeah. So I'm gonna actually find out tomorrow. I got a bunch of work I gotta
Yeah.
do, but I want to try. It's all easy. It's all down there from now where I'm at now. But
But it's stressful,
I
dude.
don't I don't know if you ever remember that. I know when we first actually started talking, I was working on a Kia Optima. It was an old Kia Optima. It was like a 2002 or whatever.
Oh, I
And
remember, baby. I remember.
I was doing the head gaskets on it, right?
Yeah, the one sponsored by Gear Wrench.
Possibly. I don't remember. I don't know what you're talking about, but I did it or whatever, and that was my first one ever doing on that one, and replaced whatever, did a timing whatever, and it drove good to me. I mean, the car didn't run. I mean, we couldn't drive it before or whatever, but we built it, and like I remember, like just like I hope this thing starts, like and it started or whatever. Drove it. We drove it for like the next couple of days, and we shipped it. And like 3 4 months later, customer finally comes back, hey, it's not running the same. Like ever since y'all did this, it hasn't.
Ever since.
Yeah, so and it's always that's literally always in the back of my head. Like even with oil changes, bro, when I do an oil change, I swear I check the drain plug like 3 4 5 times before I lower that lift. I check the oil filter, and I like just the other day I did it again. I checked it, boom, boom, and I was backing out. And if I have the slightest thought that I tighten that oil pan drain plug, I psych myself out like, nope, I'm not gonna ship it. I'll put it back on the lift,
Yes.
lift it back up, and check it. I'm like, okay, it's clear. And I could probably put tamper seal so I can drop, but I don't really
That's
do
for
that. But
noobs.
I don't do that. You know what I mean? So, but like I'm always like thinking, did I do this? Did I do this? And it gets very stressful just because if you mess up, it really bites you in the ass, man. There's
It's funny that
there's another topic. That's another topic. I'm not even gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it. But yeah.
I was saying it's funny that you're saying right now about the whole like if I have a thought, I gotta go back because I do the same thing. And I have never gone back and found one that was loose, but I know that if one day that does happen, where I don't go back and then it was loose, I'm be like, every time I check, man, and why didn't I check it this time?
Yeah, you're gonna beat yourself up. Like, why didn't I check? And that's actually happened to me before. And that's why I started doing that because one time I was like, did I drain the drain plug? And I was like, yeah, I did. And before I was like, okay, I checked it. And this time I was pulling out, and I got lucky like that. The plug didn't come loose, and the customer lived close. They drove home or whatever, went inside for a little bit, and they came back and they saw oil on the ground. So of course, my boss gave me an ass chewing on that one, but I was like, fuck. I remember I told myself, did I check it? And I said yes. But ever since then, if I have the slightest thought that I check it, and sometimes I'll pull the car the way and I'm walking and I'm thinking to myself, I'm walking about to drop off the keys, I'll drop it, I'll go back to the shop, start working, and then boom. I'm like, fuck, I don't remember. I'll run back as the car's still here, and then I'll get it, and I'll lift it back on the lift and check. Or sometimes I'll just grab a wrench, I'll run out there and I'll crawl underneath and check real quick, and I'm like, okay, it's good. I'm good. It's just that self-conscious. But
yeah, I do the same thing, man. And knock on wood, it hasn't happened to me yet. I haven't had a drain plug come loose. I've had some other stories. We could talk about them later. Which,
we'll talk about that
man, I could talk to you about my first job, man, and how those guys screwed me over so bad. And basically, oh man, I don't want to go too far of conversation, but I will say this: my first job, it was a father-son operation. They used to mess up all the time, and they would frame me all the time.
Really?
No, I'm being serious. They would frame me.
Like how?
Okay, like for instance, they would give me the wrong oil filter,
and
then it would come back leaking and squirting, and then they say you left it loose.
Wow.
And they say we're gonna have to fix this by giving them a free premium oil filter. That's why this one's different than the one we're giving you this time.
What the hell?
And it took me a while to realize that, man.
You're like, what the hell? Like you're like fuck, I'm fucking up.
Yes, man.
Wow.
And then, oh man, I could tell you some stories, man. Oh, I could tell you stories like.
We'll save that.
We'll save that. I will say this, all right. That should be our next video.
Yeah.
Every bad stereotype about a shop was what they were.
For real.
Every bad stereotype, man.
Metal shavings in the transmission pan from the brake lathe.
Never.
But never. So just one last question. So at your shop, do y'all try to go for replacing engines and transmissions, rear ends, all that, or do y'all get like remand? Do y'all buy remand? Or do
for engines, we replace with remanufactured, or it's a no-go. So we don't even do used engines.
No engines.
And I'm not opposed to used engines, but that's shop policy, and that's the way my boss works is that he because reputation is everything. Our clientele, if they're cheap, we don't want them because we're not cheap,
Yeah.
And it's not to say like, oh, we're like ultra premium and we're the best around, but the thing is like, why make most of us unhappy? If you want somebody cheap, there's somebody down the street who's a lot cheaper, who'll make you a lot happier. You just make sure happy,
Yeah.
We're not stuff. We have good clientele. and we like to invest in the ones that
Like
care.
invest in their that
Yeah.
care about their vehicles and actually invest. Yeah.
Yeah. Transmissions. So before I got there, they were doing dealer remands, and I kind of try to talk them out of it, and it works. Not only myself, but they had a bad experience with box, remands. Box being one that comes in a box, so basically from a dealer or whatever.
Yeah.
They had bad experiences with them. So they said, yeah, there's no point in paying the premium for a dealer remanufactured transmission if it's going to have issues,
Yeah.
So we found a local rebuilder. Actually, my boss found him. He found a good local rebuilder, and I talked to him, and he's a good builder, man. He's a good builder. So I trust him with my transmission,
Nice.
And then as far as rear ends, we haven't had a rear end go bad in the time that I've been there. But my boss does rebuild rear ends.
So yeah, rebuild.
Yeah, he does, and so we haven't. Yeah, and I've always wanted to learn how to do rear ends also. So he's all like, the day one comes in, I'll walk you through it. Makes it seem like not that hard. I know you said you've done them, right? You've
Yeah,
done rear ends?
I've done a few. I've done two Rams and I've done two Chevys. I've done
Yeah.
and the one on the Ram has actually been the same truck. It's one of our customers. I mean, he has like 800,000 miles on his fucking truck, dude. And he brings it in constantly. He's one of our fleet accounts, and we're constantly fixing his car, maintaining his car or his truck. It's a Ram 3500 with the 5.9, I believe, or the 5. Was it the 5?
Yeah. I don't think I stated this earlier, but yeah, I work in fleet, so we don't have our own fleet. We service fleets of vehicles. We do have some private parties, but honestly, what it usually comes down to is they don't like our price. So
They just
yeah, which is okay. I mean, not to say that. I mean, I probably wouldn't. It's hard to compete with the guy next door who does 10-minute oil changes for $30.
Yeah.
And we're like, you gotta drop off your car, pick it up 3-4 hours from now, because we're not gonna stop what we're doing to make $50.
$5-10, for an oil change.
Yeah, and then we charge more obviously because we don't use cheap oil, or we don't use cheap filters.
Fram oil filters and shit.
Yeah, exactly. Which is okay. I mean, that's fine. It's we don't go for that option. In fact, we try to discourage them because we don't want to pull. We don't have a loop tech per se. We have a tech that does a lot of loop stuff, but he's still compensated pretty well, so it doesn't.
And then the shop's losing money to pay him.
Exactly.
Something that's another topic.
So we'll
talk about that.
Yeah, so we do fleets of vehicles. So we do let's say you have a a company that has 10, 15 vehicles. We usually do their whole fleet. So yeah, and it's if you're a tech out there, man, fleet's the way to go. I mean, honestly,
for money wise, it gets. I mean, repetitious. You're busy, constantly busy.
Yeah.
I know. As for us, when it comes to transmissions, most of the time, the only time we actually put a reman or a new one is per customer request. We tell them like we can rebuild it, get a reman or a new one. We try to stay away from used, and like what's used is like when they're like, okay, you can't put a used one. Like we'll tell them like this is how much it costs to rebuild, this is how much for a new one. Like this Mitsubishi Galant I just had last week, the rebuild was $2,000 for the rebuild. Brand new or remand from the dealer was $5,000, and the used one was $800. So of course we didn't offer them the used option. We told them 2.5, and they were like, we'll think about it. It's a lot of money, blah blah. And they came up and like, do y'all have any used ones, or can we do a used one? And then we're like, okay, yeah, we'll get you a price on that one. So we're
was it a CVT?
No, it's not a CVT transmission.
Yeah.
There's that ghost I was telling you about.
Back
door just open.
Yeah, they I have nothing against used transmissions, man. Like honestly, I don't, or even used engines. I mean, I'm not opposed to them. It just really depends too. Like I'm not gonna get a used Hemi engine,
I wasn't joking.
Yeah, except I'm not gonna get a used Hemi engine for it to drop valves 20,000
Oh,
miles down the road. You know, I'm not gonna get a used 3.6 GM engine for it to throw timing chain codes, right down the road.
yeah.
And even in that case, Subaru either. I'm not gonna, unless I get that used engine, do the heads on it. I'm not gonna get a used engine. But if you got, like, say, for instance, Toyota was an Aisin transmission, like, heck yeah, I'll get a used one. I don't care. That's a good transmission, man. Probably outlast the rest of the vehicle.
Like Toyota 4-cylinders. I mean, what is it? Was it 2UZ? I think that's. I don't remember the name. I have to look it up. But that Rogue good 4-cylinder, I'll put a used one anytime. I know they're good motors. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even like a 5.3 or 4.8, stuff like that. I'll put a used engine. No problem. Like.
Yeah, usually on the GMs, I don't mind putting. They're usually pretty good unless they're tapping.
Yeah.
Kind of like.
Yeah, and that also comes a lot down to maintenance. I think. I mean, as you could probably tell, I'm a GM guy.
Yeah.
But a lot of it does come down to maintenance. I mean, there's tons of guys out there that I don't want to get into that subject, right? But yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's certain engines that I wouldn't hesitate to put a used one in there, and it's like I would really question, like, how did the original engine even go bad? I mean, yeah, I mean, if you come in with one of those '90s Camrys with a 2.2,
Yeah.
or 2.4.
I think it's a
2.2. I forgot the engine code for it. But if you come in with one that bad, I'm like, how the heck did you manage to break this?
Yeah. It's really like not, but so I think we'll end it there. I know for us, engines, transmissions, we usually offer rebuild or new. Engines, it's kind of like up to the customer. We try to push for a reman or new, but I mean, we'll put a used or rebuild is like last case scenario. Rear ends, usually it's either swap a used one or rebuild. We really don't offer new ones. I mean, and we don't see them like crazy that a rear end needs to be replaced, and you're usually pretty good with the used one because I mean, I think it's kind of hard to mess up a rear end. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So in short, I just want to say the reason that I don't really recommend rebuilding engines is just finances. It's a lot. Sometimes it's a lot cheaper if you price it out. Even on some engines, once you actually price it out, it's cheaper to get a remanufactured engine.
Yeah.
Like already pre-manufactured box unit. Basically coming remanufactured instead of remanufacturing yourself.
Yeah.
That's what that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're gonna end it there. Let us know down in the comments what your shop does, what you like to do. Thanks for watching and listening. If you are, check out Miguel on Break It Fix It. I'll put his link down below. As always, thanks for watching. Y'all stay safe.